Now, where did I put it? Here it is.
Welcome to the Toolbox, where my guests and I discuss the tools they use every day to manage life, trauma, and everything in between. It may not be applicable right now, but it's another tool for your toolbox. And I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back to Tools for the Toolbox. I am Chance Burles, as you know, and I have another absolutely outstanding episode for you here today. We have another return guest, Mr. Grant Ellsworth, the honey badger himself, coming back from episode 4 of season 1, I believe. It's been a while since we chatted. So first off, give me a little background for those that don't know you. Who are you? What do you do?
All right, my name is Grant, and as Chance said, I run the Honey Badger Alliance project. My background is I've got 3 years as a veteran. I was with the 3 PPCLI. I did manage to get one operational tour in over in Kabul, Afghanistan in 2004. Once I got back from that, I worked in the oil and gas for a couple of years. It kind of gave me a really big appreciation for the energy sector and what we have here in Canada. And after that, kind of felt like something was still missing out of life, and there's just something I wasn't getting. So then that's whenever I decided I'm going to try this correctional officer gig out. I've been there. It's just about 14 years now that I've been there, and it's definitely been an experience. It's very different from a military experience for sure, but there are some good lessons between the two that I've learned the hard way that I would like to share with people. And that was kind of the reason why I started this Honey Badger project, is because I see a lot of people where they get caught into these situations, these incidents, and then life starts to go downhill. And, you know, I've been there too, where I've gone through some fairly big downhill spirals and some climbs back up the hill. And even right now too, like I had to take a bit of a break away from work and kind of get myself fixed up, because I found out there's another type of person. So generally when you hear things about PTSD, there's something called underregulation of emotion. These are the people that it's harder to function out in society, you know what I mean? And it's harder to hold our emotions and we get snappier. Well, there's another type I didn't even know about until I actually started getting help, and it's called overregulation of emotion. So anybody that's not familiar with that, how that works is like you can have something absolutely atrociously horrible happen in front of you, and the mind has the ability to disregard any feelings at that time and just buries them so you can function and complete the mission. Where that comes into play is it's harder to pick up on when you're starting to have trouble. It's also it's a bit trickier to get a beat on. Can we pause here for 1 second, Chance? Just give me just because I gotta give my daughter some crackers here. I told them to stay upstairs, but just hang on 1 second.
All good.
All right, sorry about that. So
All good.
I'll start back with the overregulation portion. Yeah, I told it's tricky because they're both home now. It was easier before because they went to school and whatever.
Yeah, I got one that's at the day home and one's upstairs. I got him on the tablet though, so he's good to go.
Yeah, well, I tried to set this one up with the old Netflix. I'm like, just for an hour, just watch your show. And clearly that wasn't the case. Okay, so
overregulation.
Yeah, okay. Another concept that I became familiar with, and only after I started getting professional help here on the matter, was overregulation of emotion. And what that is you can see something completely atrocious and horrible happen in front of you, and the mind can overcome it and disregard how you feel to store it in the back of your head so you can function and get the job done. The only problem with that, as I've come to find out, is it gets buried. It never gets dealt with or addressed. And so while we're not as outwardly snappy and underregulated as the other type, it still comes out in the forms of irritability. And like, I know me, I had horrible sleep, and my wife would tell me, like, I would do make these horrible pain noises, and I just tense up really crazy. So it does come out in other ways, but because most of the thing we see is the underregulation, that's what they accepted. Okay, well, it's not that, so clearly it must be something else, and I don't have that big of an issue. It comes to find out it's every bit as bad, and it's harder to detect. So anyways, that's kind of where I'm at now. But at the same time, like I said, I did learn some hard lessons, and I was able to rationalize some of it and make some of it more workable. Now, unfortunately, I only started to figure this out later after I already had all these problems and bullshit that are in the back of my brain here now. So I still have to deal with those, but at the same time, I still managed to find out, to get some answers, but I was able to put it in a language that is digestible as well for my peers. So, for example, we would have some kind of a horrible incident would happen, and I could watch that person. I could see look on their face. I'm like, they are beating the shit out of themselves right now, and I know it. So then obviously it's like, listen, okay, what we just went through here, this is very not a normal experience. You're probably feeling any range of these emotions, and I'd list them out, between sadness and guilt and shame and anger and all that stuff. And I was like, that's all perfectly normal. Because it's something that you are not familiar with, something you hadn't had happen. It's very traumatic. It's just thrown at you. So don't beat yourself up too bad. And it's like, at the same time as well, you still did this, and this, but you still interacted, you still responded, you still did something, and that counts, right? And there's our body, and I'm not going to go too in depth in it on here, but we threat prioritize, right? So you're going to notice different things. So, and you may also miss certain things, which is the big point, right? So you start explaining that to them, and I see the light bulb go off, and I could see like the air they were kind of a bit more settled down. So I'm like, man, and I started to be able to do this a little more regularly. So I was like, well, I want to help more people because this is just local at our site. And I was like, we're not too terribly different all across the globe here. So let's just try and help out some more people. And that's kind of where the Honey Badger Alliance was born. Because we all have to face these horrible things, but we have to do something about it, both during the incident, which you either have to be physically able, and the more knowledge you have beforehand, and the less you suffer on the back end. But even still, it's not a lost cause. There's still ways to unwind that as well. It's just we have to be able to understand how to do it and where we fit into all that. And so that's kind of that was the goal of it. But the more I say it, it's like that's a huge project. Like you spend your whole lifetime doing work like that and still only get not even a tenth of the answers, but we got to try. And I think that's, you and I talked about this, and I talked about it with some other guys, but right now our generation, that's our mission right now. Is the information is there. The information out there is very good. The problem is why aren't people picking up and using the information more? And I think it's because it's not in a digestible enough language. So that's our challenge. We have to figure that out, and then we have to deliver it that way.
Well, and this is the way. I mean, this is what we do right now. Is what I've come to learn over time is that everybody learns differently. Everybody sees things differently. Everybody interprets things differently. And the brain is a wonderful organ in that we could be in the same room dealing with the exact same incident, with the same level of experience, with the same interactions with the other person, and come out with two completely different stories of that whole incident, because you're looking at it through your lens and your experience, and I'm looking at it through my lens and my experience. And even when we actually sit down and talk about it, we're still going to come up with a different story than what actually happened, because anybody else also has an interpretation of it. And how we interpret the information determines how we react to it, right? Like, we see this all the time, and this is a very minor example of this, but how do we usually greet each other with like other military organizations, or how do we talk to each other, right? We will cuss each other out left, right, and center, and we'll all have big smiles on our face, right? Oh yeah, hey, how's it going, right? But would you walk up to somebody on the street and be like, "Hey, fuckface, what do you want?" Right? No, you wouldn't. But I would do it to you in a heartbeat, right? Because I know you and you know me, and we have a context to each other.
Yeah.
But this is how we interact with trauma as well. And when you have different views on it, the reactions are going to be different. And then not only that, the reactions to the reactions are going to be different, right? We walk into a really bad scene, and I'm sitting there, I'm like giggling about it, like, that guy got fucked up, right? Funny shit, right? And I look at you, and you're sitting there bug-eyed, like, holy shit, I have never seen this. My reaction to you is going to be different, but my reaction to myself is going to be different, because I'm like, oh, fuck, look at that guy. Maybe I should be more concerned. And he's going to do you're going to do the exact same thing to me. So I love the fact that we are now, as a group of us, this generation of veterans and first responders and people who are finally starting to understand how the brain works and how we deal with trauma, we can pass it on to that next generation to solve the next question, which is, how do we make it more palatable? How do we make people understand exactly what we were talking about? And I've found that you have to find the right language to talk to the person, but you also have to get them at the right time. Because if they're not ready to accept it, it doesn't matter what language you're going to fucking say. And I was going to ask you, when you deal with those incidences with younger guys or people of lesser experience or whatever, how do you get them to understand the language that you're using?
I have to make
because
sorry.
No, I was just going to say, is it trade specific? Do you start playing into, the fact that you're both correctional officers, or do you try to play off their history, or do you plot to use your relationship? Like, how do you engage that person so that they can actually grasp the information?
Okay, so I just needed to chew on it for a second while you're talking about it. The best way I could put it is you have to come from a mentoring perspective, but also that you actually care. There's a very big emphatic connection that has to be made there, and to use proper language, which, I mean, you're eventually the environment will dictate that you'll eventually just start using all that slang in environment anyways. But the biggest thing is you have to show people that you actually give a fuck about them. And so, like, and what you just said, like the greetings and things like that, hey, fuck you, how's it going, kind of deal, and this, that, like those all have an appropriate time and place. But whenever someone is experiencing some kind of like a big emotion like that, that's not the time for that. And I know sometimes we use that to try and downplay the situation, but I found that is less effective overall than actually approaching someone from the position that you actually give a fuck about them. Be like, listen, okay, first of all, you did an outstanding job. You reacted, you did something, and no one can ever take that away from you, and that's all we could ever ask you. And before you start beating yourself up, you got to consider this, and the points I mentioned before, right, without going on that ramble again, but consider this and consider that or whatever, and look, usually nothing ever horrible bad does happen, because there's enough experienced people around, at least where we work, to get a handle on things fairly quickly and shut it down. And so it's like, okay, so just remember the lesson for next time. No one got hurt, no one got seriously injured or whatever. So, take that for what it's worth, and then get yourself reorientated, sort yourself out or whatever, do whatever you need to do. And I try and tell them too to stay away from the substances, because I'm kind of getting a bit more of an understanding how that works. Like, I remember seeing it, the Gilmartin speech when I went to a long time ago. Is this going to be audio only, right? For the most part?
No, this is video.
Okay. So anyways, so we operate like on a sine wave like such, right? So, you have your highs, your adrenaline highs and dopamine, and then you crash for a little bit or whatever. And usually when we crash, we're home. So that's when you start to resort to liquor and drugs and all that stuff, and it gives you that spike again. So now we're constantly up here all the time, which, I mean, if you put a turbocharger or a supercharger in a family car and no reinforcements, and you run that fucker to the max, we know what's going to happen, and what's going to happen for, not too long. And so that's not healthy. So we want to try and avoid that. So the way we avoid it is we bring people down quicker. The other thing we could also look at doing as well is, I did an article on this is a couple of years ago too, called the flat tire theory. So say right now, if you have somewhere to go after, you're going to the grocery store, you're going somewhere, and you get a flat tire along your way, you're going to be pissed off, and you're going to be very irritated, because obviously now that's a huge inconvenience. You got to get out and get dirty and all that. But what if I told you, I was like, okay, Chance, you're going to go to the grocery store after, you're going to get a flat tire. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can't get out of it. Like, you're just going to have to accept the fact you're getting a flat tire. So when that flat tire now comes, is it going to be as distressing and disruptive, or you kind of like, you already prepared yourself for it, right? And so where I'm going with that now is we have to do the same thing with the new people we take in. And unfortunately, we are the experienced ones that have to get past all of our own issues in order to put it into that digestible language. So for example, when someone new comes into the correctional world, they'll tell them, okay, you're going to see stabbings, you're going to see overdoses and fights, and it's going to be all horrible. But that's where the description stops, right? No one ever tells you something like, all right, so you're going to witness a stabbing, and what's going to happen is it's probably going to be about 15 feet away from you. You're going to hear a lot of yelling. You're going to hear a lot of screaming. You're going to hear squeaky shoes, like, the basketball court. You're going to hear that. You're going to be afraid. You're going to be frozen with panic. You're not going to have a fucking idea what to do, and there's still going to be people yelling. And it's like, but you get it in gear, and whatever you need to do, if you can get a break to break them apart, or if you got to pepper spray those guys and put them on the ground, separate them and patch them up. And you're going to see these things where people in close quarters, they've grown up a different way. They're wired very differently, and they don't care. They will stab each other over, like, someone disrespecting them or not owing them $50 for whatever. And they'll do things like that. And it's so against everything you've ever seen. So if you don't feel okay about that when you see that, that's also okay. But you just have to know this is the environment that we operate in. And, we have to keep everybody safe, and we have to keep ourselves safe as well. So that's why it's important to know this aspect of it. But no one ever says that part of it, right? And like I said,
yeah.
And especially all the emotional shit afterwards, because then you start to question yourself other ways. Okay, so did I do everything I should have? Did I miss this? Did I miss that? Am I gonna get in trouble now? And like, you know what I mean? So there's all those things. But if you understand where you fit into your environment appropriately, and understand how to respond, and more importantly, if you're not caught unaware and you leave your feelings, if you're not at the mercy of your feelings and emotions, and you're more in cognitive control, then the outcome will be substantially better, or it should be anyways, right? Which leads me into the main topic here is anger.
Mm-hmm.
So taking into all those things that I just described, I didn't paint probably a very pretty picture. And there's a few more levels of detail I can go, but I mean, it probably is enough to make the point.
Yeah.
So very similar to a lot of the guys in the veteran world, the other professions as well that deal with people like that. Anger is a very common theme, and what I've come to find out too is anger. So just to give some people some context there, in the very first talk, I was very against anger. I didn't think it was useful for anything. And that's just where my knowledge was at that time, a couple of years ago. Now, anger is useful, but it's also something we need to really, really pay attention to. So it can be useful in the fact that I've done probably more creative and constructive things in my life out of spite than anything else. I will say that 100% right now. It's like when people piss you off, it's like, I'm going to fucking show you, and I'm going to smash you out of it even. So it's like, it is helpful, but it's also good to be aware that if we're always angry, like chronically angry, which is going to seem very familiar, as I come to find out, anger is kind of like an epinephrine for other emotions as well. And the reason for it is because anger is more of an action emotion, right? So like if you're pissed off, you're going to do something about it. You want to do something about it. So it's almost like a coping mechanism where you don't have the chance of flight or freeze, right? It's like fight. And so you got to make yourself kind of pissed off. And even like I said, I'd watch, like, people will do this to each other when they get in arguments, and criminals will do it too when they're arguing. Like, they'll make themselves angry because it's like, okay, this makes it easier to act on my impulses now. Mm-hmm. And as I found out, like I said, as I've been going through this trauma therapy, which is god awfully horrible, like things that I thought I felt angry about, it's like, no, there's different emotions under there, like lots of sadness and lots of, like, betrayal and just like lots of other stuff. And so this just kind of covers it all over. So it's like you're carrying around big bags full of lead, you know what I mean? And you just keep taking these fucking epinephrine shots just so you can keep shouldering the load. But it's like, when do we realize at the point it's like, I need to drop these bags? Like, I have to just let these bags go. But it's like, but they're so attached to you. So it's like, well, I have to figure out how to take them off and how to get rid of them. And like I said, sometimes we need help, because the other thing with emotions is you get those blinders on, right? And it's like, I can only see this, and I think I'm doing good. And like I said, even myself, I've done a very unhealthy amounts of research over the last, 6 or 7 years now. And I managed to, like, and even still, when I get new information, I can still pivot on it pretty quickly now. But at the same time, it's like, there's just shit you have to address, and sometimes you need help, and there's no way out of it. And I tell people too, like, the worst case scenario is you're going to lift up a rock and you're going to see there's a lot of rot and shit under there, but you're going to shine a light on it. You're going to deal with it. Best case scenario, you have something that's just bothering you just in the tip of your head that you can't put your finger on, and you get help with it, and it's it. It's done. So it's like, what's there really to lose here, except for misery?
I always use the old example of like trying to lift something that's awkward but not heavy.
Okay,
right? And it's those things that you can kind of carry, but it's just, you can never quite get a good grip on it. You can never quite hold it. And when those things get really heavy, then you're going to throw your back out, or you're going to drop it on a toe, or like something bad is going to happen eventually with it. But how hard is it to, like, just, if there were 4 dudes, 4 of your buddies just sitting there, and you're trying to load this fucking weird ass fucking shape into the back of your truck, and they're all sitting there laughing at you like, dude, you know, we're standing right here. Like, you could just ask us, right? Or you can try to just muscle through it and be like, I fucking got it. And early on, especially with trauma, especially with negative issues, just trying to shoulder that load it's okay. Like, it's light. It's just awkward and whatever. Okay, cool. But as you say, you keep adding more to it, right? And then it adds more, and then it gets heavier. And now you're trying to hold it up with one leg, and now you're throwing your back out in order to do it, until you either drop it, or you hit rock bottom, or it falls on you, or whatever, right? I mean, how many people die from having vending machines fall on them, let alone your own fucking trauma, right? Think about that. It's just like it would flatten you pretty hard. And it flattened me pretty hard. I'm sure it flattened you pretty hard. Most people I know that are on the healing journey got laid out pretty quick.
Yeah, and like I remember at the point too where I'm like, I am so fucking done right now. Like I can't do it anymore. And I remember too, I was at work and just very narrow cognitive bandwidth, like just even doing like day-to-day things, and just having even just regular conversations, it just became too much. I'm like, I can't even handle this. Like, I would just go back and I would find some paperworky stuff to do, like, away from everybody. And it's like, it's just too much. And it's like, and I knew it too. It's like, I know I'm supposed to be going, I know I should be helping with this, but I can't even bring myself to do that. I know better. And it's like, what the fuck is this? So I'm like, okay, it's time for sure. Now it's time. Like, that's it. That's the straw right there. And once I kind of realized that, that's when I was like, okay. And then the other thing too is every time you offload some of that horrible shit out of the back of your mind too, it gives you more and more clarity, which is a welcome as well, right? So I mean, we want to think we can be able to shoulder all this and that, but why? It's like you're diminishing your performance and your potential to be even better by doing so.
Yep. One of my favorite remedial measures when I was an instructor is weapons appreciation. And you take your rifle and you put it out in front of you, and you just sit there and you hold it and you stare at it, and initially 7.5 pounds, okay, whatever, it's not that bad. After a minute or so, it's pretty fucking heavy, right? And that's all you're doing, is you're using energy, just holding that trauma or that memory or that feeling or that way of thought, that thought process, right? And just like, no, this is the way it's supposed to be. And then as soon as you let that go, as soon as you get help unpacking it and placing it in the right, it never goes away, right? You don't lose the bad memories.
Yeah.
You just understand them. And then you get to a point where you're like, oh, that's why I felt like that. Oh, okay, cool. And you can move on from it, but it still stays there. So it's just like unpacking boxes. You're like, oh, that's where that fucking goes. And you slide it in the thing, and cool. You can move on, but what it does is it opens up the space in your head, so you're not actually using that 10 or 15% energy constantly just to hold that. Holding your rifle, you're not holding that. You're not using that arm. You put it down, and you go, oh, now I have two hands.
Yep.
Right. and you just slowly build on that until what you realize is that you were sitting there holding 7 or 8 plates, and you had freaking plates spinning on your toes and your fingers and all, and you're just like, why? Wait a second. And you put 2 or 3 of them down. You're like, holy shit, I can use my whole left arm. And then you put 2 or 3 more down. Holy shit, why do I have one spinning on my toe? Like, it allows you to process each one then easier once you get through that first phase of basically admitting that what you've been doing is not working. I think that's the hardest part. And that elevates your anger too, right? Because I know for me, when I was really bad, I would get I'd get these, like, I call them rage spirals. So you get angry about something, and then you realize that you're angry about it and you shouldn't be angry about it. And then you get angry about being angry, and then you're angry because you can't stop being angry. And then it just like ramps you up until you're just friggin' living, you're wandering around. And those are never good, but I would get into them. And once I started to realize that, I started unpacking some of the trauma, and I started going, oh, that's why I got angry. Okay, well, I can work on that. I can avoid that. I can do something with it other than just be angry about it.
Yeah.
And it would be little stuff, noise, fucking traffic. But what I wasn't realizing was that the noise was triggering something else. The traffic was triggering something else. The friggin', the baby crying in the supermarket hurt my ears, and I would get angry about it. And then that would, like, send me into this fucking spiral. Whereas now, I have noise canceling headphones that I carry with me. Cool. It doesn't hurt my ears anymore. I put the headphones on. Done. And then I don't get into those situations. But here's the trick, and this is the question I have for you, is that for me, I pushed myself. I use those things that I know now bother me to push myself into that next stage, right? So I will wait a little bit longer before I put my headphones on, or I'll stay in a crowded environment for an extra couple of seconds, just to be like, instead of just immediately leaving, like managing it for a little bit and then leaving. And that's allowed me to do quite a bit, where now I can walk around a mall without much of an issue. I can be in crowded environments as long as I have a bit more control. I have my headphones with me, but I don't use them as often as I used to, that kind of stuff. How did you get from a point where, being at that point where you were like jacked up about things all the time, to being a bit more like regulating more often and then developing it?
Okay, so the biggest thing that I've noticed that helped right away, and I mean after like probably a couple of months, was I needed to have some time and space away from the environment that was causing everything, just for a chance to at least to come down a little bit. Then as that starts to happen, then you get a bit more relaxed. And then what you're saying too, it's called exposure therapy. And so anyways, it does get a lot easier to do that, because now you're not such on super, super high alert. So it's like, now it's like, oh shit, okay, I got this, like you're saying, okay, I have this thing that it's a trigger. It's like, I'm all of a sudden I'm on high alert. Why? Right. And then you can kind of slowly and safely, like, like it sounds like it's all pretty safe things, like you're going to the grocery store and things like that. We're not putting ourselves in any danger, but those things, those triggers still exist there. So I think it is important to kind of, I think it's important not to just desensitize ourselves to it, but it's to rewire how we respond to that. So for example, and like I said, I still get caught by these. So I'm not saying that I've got this shit all figured out. I'm just saying that I've been playing around with it enough that
me too. Yeah.
It's all about, again, how we make our brain take the information in. So you make it a little competitive game, right? So you hear something, for me anyways, I hear something like that, or if I get a jolt or whatever, I'll try as best I can to catch myself and stop and look around and be like, okay, nothing danger. It was just some kind of whatever, just some normal whatever noise or whatever it is, and kind of carry on. But I mean, you still kind of look around, but it's not like, oh my god, like where the fuck's it going to come from? But it's just like, okay, so it startled me. Is there any real threat? No. Okay, life carries on, kind of deal, right? We always have the benefit of knowing what a threat looks like, so that will never go away. The problem is that we have to rewire ourselves to understand everything is not a threat, because we don't live in that kind of a world now. We live in this fairly safe world. I'm not going to say nothing doesn't ever happen, but it's substantially less than the ones that we're familiar with. Yeah. Right. And it's just, the only problem is that whenever it's something that's stressful, it wires it in so quick that it takes so much more effort just to unwire it. But it definitely is worth the effort though too, because as you're doing it, you're calming everything down, which also keeps more of the cortisol out of the system. And I don't know if the information ever changed on that or got updated, but I remember, like, if you have lots of cortisol, no stress hormones, like, it gives your body your more peak performance right now, but it absolutely stalls growth. So anything you learn is going to be substantially slower when you're in that hypervigilant state all the time. So it's not good to stay in there. That being said, I just wanted to address this as well, because I said my stance on anger has changed now as well. When we get things like that, when it matters, we have to learn how to appropriately wield it for our own needs, and that's the big key difference. So instead of just being like an angry Tasmanian devil and we just chew up everything in your path, so to speak, learning where we can direct it. And sometimes, if it's only like a confrontation with somebody, it's assertive or whatever, maybe you only need a small little bit of a trickle just to give yourself kind of a bit more, hey, this is the fucking boundary kind of deal. But you don't have to go all the way overboard where you want to yell and scream and get in the guy's face. Another thing I found that kind of helps to keep things in the realm of appropriateness is just understanding more about other people as well. So for example, road rage, I'm sure we've all had experiences with road rage, but the last,
maybe once or twice.
But the last one I seen, I don't know what it was, but something really, really clicked, because and especially when we get cut off, we always hate when we get cut off, but this time it was just enough to stop me. Whenever the guy went by, I seen the look on his face. I'm like, that is one miserable puddle of shit right there. I'm like, I'm kind of actually glad I'm not him. And that made me feel a lot better instantly, but it also kind of gave me a bit more clarity on the subject. I'm like, well, first of all, we get so offended is because it's more of a deep-rooted thing, and it comes down to validation, right? It's like if I just completely disregard you, I'm like, well, fuck you, Chance. It's like I don't even validate your existence, and that's pretty much what we live and die for, is that right there. So right there, I think that's what it does. It digs into that very, very deep issue in the brain. That's why we get so mad. But what it is, and now I think about other road rage incidents like that where someone else cuts you off or does something stupid, it's like they're having a shitty day, and it's like, why am I going to get? It's like someone who can't even regulate themselves. Why the fuck would I get offended by them? It's like look at them. Like why? Like, you know what I mean? They're like 4 or 5 rungs down here, and they're all pissed off and stewing. And someone's like, I even have better control than that. So why do I give a fuck about their opinion? Just okay, go on you go, kind of deal, right? And it doesn't ruin your whole day. And I don't know. Just the last time it happened, I was like, man, I wasted so much time being pissed off about stupid shit like that.
Me too. And I realized the thing that like clicked in my head was, I've been there. I've been that guy. I've cut people off. I've, made a wrong turn, or made like, oh shit, I like weaved into a lane and I didn't see him. Right. And we've all been there. We've been pissed off or in a hurry and like, oh shit, I got to get in. Right. We've been that dude. Mm-hmm. And okay, cool, man. If you need to be in front of me that badly, give her. I'm okay, right? I know my timings. I know what I need to do. And I've just being able to say, I've been that guy, brings everything back down. And I'm like, yeah, cool. I understand where he is. All right, let him, right? Fuck, man. If I'm 30 seconds later and I'm in a good mood, win, right? If I arrive on the time I wanted to be there, but I'm pissed off, what good is that? Like, how have I benefited? I made a timing, great, but now I'm fucking pissed off for the next 20, 30 minutes, however long it takes to get calmed down. And I'd drive to pick up my son from school. That was the big one for me. I was like, oh, I got to get my son from school, and I have a very specific timing. I know it takes 12 minutes to get from my house to his school. It's very succinct driving the path I have to take. And every once in a while, there'd be that dude, right? That you'd like speed up, get in front of you, then slow down, then try and make another, and you're just sitting there like, what the fuck? Or you get behind big trucks, or you get stuck between people, or whatever happens, right?
Yep.
And you start to get riled up. And there was that one day where I was making an exit onto an off ramp, and a dude cut across 3 lanes of traffic, like from the far left, 3 lanes of traffic all the way through, and like way past the actual exit line, right? You're now in the V'd off area where you're not supposed to, and he's just like right through it, right in front of me, and then like swerve, and I'm just sitting there like, what? Okay, I've been there. Right. It's like, yeah, okay. I've been like, oh shit, I need that exit, and just fucking okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Whatever, I guess you really needed to be in this lane, man. And then everything went smooth from there.
Well, again, how many times have you ever driven and being, you got something on your mind and you're distracted and you're kind of on cruise control in front of you, right? I mean, that's how shit like that happens too.
Well, and as we were talking about in the previous episode with anger, is that it like it's a drain on the body. It can be focused, but it's a drain on the body. And if you're always angry, that's more energy you're just burning up, that you're like every day makes it every day harder, and then you don't sleep well, and then blah blah blah, right? You're not drinking water, and you're not doing all the stuff you need to do. It's like, you remember the A&A soldiers that would like, they put their rifle over top of their head over a wall and just be like, and you're like, you're not hitting anything, right? But that's unfocused anger.
Yeah,
it's just hazard in a general direction, right? If somebody gets in your way, you're going to get a face full of it. Versus focused anger, like when you're doing martial arts or when you're doing combatives, or you're doing something that you can focus on something and utilize the strength necessary, or the strength that you get from anger. That's like a well-trained sniper, right? Who's just sitting there on his rifle, just waiting for it. You want violence? I got violence waiting for you, right? Here it is. Done. But that's it. It's not everywhere. You're not going to hit other people. You're not going to get collateral damage because of it. It's going to be very focused and very direct, and then it'll be gone and done. But yeah, anger is a weird one, man, because it's useful, kind of, but it's you know, if you drink coffee too much, it loses its youth, right? You don't get that little bit of alertness from coffee if you drink it too much.
Yep.
Same way as if you use anger. If you're constantly using your anger, you need more. You got someone bugging you?
Oh no, they're down here spying. I was trying to be as sneaky as I could there. Sorry, I just seen them sneak by. All right, keep going. Sorry.
No worries. Yeah, it's just it's something that needs to be worked on.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then it's a wild gut.
Well, here's the thing with that. Like, it's a never-ending project until the day we croak, though, really, because, I mean, again, it's always going to be there, and it is a very useful emotion to help navigate some of the more dangerous situations we're presented with. But at the same time, yeah, it's like anything else that's enabling like that. It can be intoxicating, or, you know, it just completely takes over if you let it. And so I think, like I said, the biggest goal we can strive for is appropriateness, right? And now it's easy to say, you know, and it's very easy to say too with what you just talked about there as well, but that represents a lifetime work, because not only to control your anger, you have to understand where someone else's mindset is. You have to understand your own body awareness, and then you also have to understand the actual appropriateness of the situation, why it's unfolding based on, you know, a couple of things I just said just now, plus a bunch more, right? So it takes a lot of work just to get to that, but the reward at the end is that you can. Then there is no illusion of freedom. You have complete freedom, because it's like, now I can make every choice that I want to make. And if this is something that I know is going to be dangerous, then I want that gift to propel me through it. And if it's not, if it's just some regular routine thing, then why in the hell do I need it in the first place when there's no critical rush, right? And that's what I've been realizing, is that it is important, but not to the degree that I think that a lot of us, we have it, or we fall victim to it, I guess, because sometimes it does turn into a runaway, like you said earlier, right? And it's very, very hard to pull yourself out of it. And sometimes, unfortunately, you know, some people, they get some fairly heavy consequences before they realize that we're fucking it up, right? So that's a life's work, what we just talked about right there. But it's very rewarding, because then you get to enjoy life more. And I think we can also understand, and I think it is necessary to kind of to put ourselves in, not put ourselves, but to be around like where there is some danger, so we understand like the totality of the world, right? Because if you don't, then that's where you get these surprises, and you get these things that, you know, cost you 5 or 6 years of your life because you wasted away sitting in your fucking house playing video games and drinking and not doing nothing else. And like, you know, I've been in situations like that too, and it's like you get filled with an awful lot of regret, because it's like I remember I sat back and I thought about it. I'm like, man, I could have took a couple of trades. I could have took some more schooling. I could have learned, you know, some more business things. I could all the other things I could have did, instead of sitting in my house, you know, just feeling sorry for myself because I was too fucking stubborn to tell somebody, hey, I think I have a problem. I don't know what it is. And that's what the cost of that is, right? You lose all that. So yeah,
it's like the blown tire example that you were giving earlier, right? That if someone prepares you, like, I'm sure you know how to change a tire.
Yep.
Right? Like, so if you were driving down the road and be like, bang, crap. Okay, you pull off to the side of the road. You've probably done it before. You have some experience. Fuck, it's annoying. Yeah, it takes a lot of work. You got to get your freaking spare out. You got to blah, 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 blah. I'll tell you a little story. I was coming back from a hockey game, and it was just before midnight. Like, it was late. And I was driving down the Henday, so like the freeway. And I saw a car on the side of the road. And I was like, oh, man, it's late. I should probably check on this guy, right? And I pulled over to the side of the road, and I walked up to him, and he was staring at his blown out tire. And I'm like, how's it going? What are you up to? And he's like, it sucks. You know, I have all my stuff in the car. I've never changed a tire before. I don't know what to do. And in my head, I was like, how have you never changed a tire? Like, I've changed many tires. How have you never changed a tire? Until I was just like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't fucking matter. But think about that guy's entire, all of his experience in life, all of a sudden getting just fucking sideswiped. Because if I didn't stop, there was not another soul on that road, man. He would have been there a long, long time. And that would have just, like, that would make it worse. And that's that 5-6 months in the dark of just having absolutely no experience. All of a sudden, this trauma hits you, and you're just like, fuck. I have no idea what to do. And having absolutely no access to anything, any kind of help, but then somebody like yourself or a mentor or even a random citizen just comes by and is like, you all right? Unfortunately, in our line of work, in our group of people and the mentality we have, we're more likely to say, yeah, I'm fine. Right? Because we don't want to be seen as unknowing or weak or whatever. Versus someone who goes, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing. Can you please help me?
Yep.
And then you can move forward. How did you get over the point where you were like, I have no idea what the fuck I'm doing, and now I need help?
Yeah, so it's a lot easier and it's a lot harder than I thought it was. You just have to start doing stuff, and it literally is that fucking shit simple. And like, I ask these questions to people who are like like psychiatrists and psychologists, and like I'm kind of looking around and doing my own research, and it's like literally whatever you do for the day is kind of what's going to wire you, the way your brain is moving out. Like I said, it doesn't fix anything that's going on inside. That still has to get addressed. What it does is it gets you out of this fucking shitty ass paralysis where you're just stuck and you just want to sit and not look at anybody and talk to nobody. That absolutely cannot and should not happen. And that being said, like I said, I had it happen to me a couple of times where I lost probably a couple of years of my life, productive years of my life, doing exactly that. And so what had changed for me was I started going out and doing things with people, healthy, productive activities though, right? Like sports activities. And now, like I said, I do this, we kind of on a break just because I was on holidays there, but I'm trying to get a 5K run just locally here. I really like the idea of what you're doing. Another guy put something out there, but as well as like, well, in battalion PT, we did it once a week, and it wasn't about, being a super fit and finishing a run ahead of everybody. It was just doing something with your peers, having that fucking mutual connection right there in person with someone. And it's like you always have someone running beside you, and if people start falling back, you turn around, you pick them all back up, and everybody finishes at the same time. And when we're young, you don't realize nothing. It's like, oh fuck, it's Monday. It's gonna be that long ass fucking run.
Oh God, fucking run.
So it's twofold. You do get to burn all the last of the booze out and all that stuff, but at the same time as well, you're building those connections every time. And when I realized that, I was like, man, I understand. Like it's good, and like you see, you guys are getting real good traction. I mean, for yourself too. I was actually really happy to hear you went all the way to Ottawa for that. I was like, that's fucking really cool, man. We got to help him out with that. Now he's there with the big dogs now, so that's pretty cool. But
yeah.
But even like when we were doing those things, like the conversations we had on those walks were like, they're just great. So it's like, okay, that has to happen more, where you can just, there's no cameras, there's no recording, there's no stupid things like that. Just get out and enjoy your time with people and simple things, right? And the other thing I realized too, though, with that is, again, let's bring it back to validation. So if I'm giving someone an hour out of my day to be with them, to help them get stronger, or vice versa, time is something you can never get back. You can always make money back, you can always get more stuff, but you never fucking ever get time back. So if you're willing to give that to another person, that is the best gift you can give someone. And so, like I said, it's very important that we do these things, because only usually creative things come from that. I mean, look at all the things that look back 4 years ago from where we all were then and where we are now, and kind of what we're doing now. It's like, it's not even the same, right? And that was all based on, like, I've met you in person. You're right out here in my driveway, and a bunch of the other guys as well. And there's a bunch too that I still haven't got to, but it'll happen. I mean, it's happening. So there's enough exposure there. But anyways, doing things like that, and the bonus of guys like us doing it is you instantly, because none of this stuff existed before in the format it does now, like where it's like you can go out down to your local sports center and join up with the generic, soccer team or whatever, and you still meet people. That's fine, but it's a lot harder, right? Because now you have to go out and be with people that don't have the same values as we do. So this way, hey, we're a group. We have all the same values as you guys do. Come on out, even if it's just for the day, just once, and usually once is all you need to hook them, right? And then remember that good experience, right? And that's what the important part of is to get people out doing stuff. And anyways, without going on too much more long of a ramble, that's what started to go the other way for me. Was I started getting out and doing more things like that, doing more constructive things. And like, now our routines are different. Like, we set aside time every week. It's like, okay, so this is a family activity we're doing every week. Like, for example, if we do breakfast or whatever like that, we either have it home where everybody's present and it's a nice big breakfast cooked, or we'll go to, like, say, Denny's, because that's just kind of nice to get out of the way, and it's not too crazy or over extravagant. But just building things like that into your life and into your schedule are huge, and I find that they help the biggest. And like I said, they don't fix the problem, but what they do is they help put us into a better headspace. So it's like we're not so defensive either. And that's the other thing I wanted to mention about earlier too. When you were talking about again with the sniper analogy, right? Like, I have all this focused anger in here and this and that. But in order to get there, in order to sort all these traumas and stuff out, though, too, we have a big, I don't know about you, but like there's a big resistance at first to want to even open up, because it's like, well, I don't want to share with anybody because it's too fucking horrible. I don't want to unload it on anybody. So there's that aspect too. And like I said, that's a little bit another of a tricky one. But I just want to put this out for people so they can kind of get it too, and maybe this might help. This helped me quite a bit, actually. So if I'm at work and something horrible is going on, well, people at home, they don't know that. They don't know, right? So it's like, if I'm going to come home and I'm going to be a standoffish fucking prick, well, that's not fair, because it's like you catch everybody blindsided, right? So I find the biggest thing for me is, you go home and say, listen, today was a bad day at work, and you don't have to go into any kind of crazy gory details, but listen, we dealt with this today, okay? So I'm still kind of not right. I'm trying to figure it out. And I'm not saying this to be an asshole to you, but I need my space because I'm trying to sort it out. And there's nothing wrong with that too. And I know it was a big question before, where it'd be like, well, do you tell your family about the things you see or you don't? Well, here's the thing that we got to remember. Everybody watches movies, and movies are based on reality. And so people are not completely naive. And I found for me it was helpful, because when you do it that way, instead of it being a self-fulfilling prophecy of no one fucking understands and look at them, everybody's out to get me and everybody's after me. No, they just don't know. And guess what? You initiated that firefight with the rocket launcher. That's on me. That's, you know what I mean? That's on us. So it's like, this is what happened. I'm kind of going through it. And then the change in approach and response from the other parties, night and day different. It's like, okay, this is a lot easier now. Maybe it helps just and like I said, you don't have to lay everything out, but just give them a general idea.
It's context. I talk about this all the time, is that, like, you need to have context to understand. Everyone knows what it's like to be afraid. Cool. Somebody's not going to know what it's like to, walk down a road that is IED'd. But they know what it's like to be afraid. They know what it's like to be nervous. They know what it's like to try, like, be aware, super aware of things. So when you give someone context, I do this to my wife all the time. We'll be driving and I'll be like, hey, I had a flashback. And she'll be like, okay, do you want me to drive? I'll be like, depending on the situation, yes, no, whatever. But then when we get to where we're going, she knows already what needs to happen. And usually I just need some time. I need to sort my friggin' emotions out, sort my head out, and then I can come back and rejoin the family. That's part of the process. Right? And as what you said earlier is, when you engage the process, it fucking sucks. Like, it just sucks. You have to go through all of the worst shit you've ever been through over and over and over again, because you need to understand it, and you have to go through it. I saw this really great meme online, and it's like a kitchen cabinet closed with a bunch of bowls that have fallen onto the cabinet door itself. So nothing is broken, but the moment you open that door, everything's going to fucking fall and shatter, right? And there's no good way that's going to go in terms of opening it. So you can just leave it closed and it always stays there, but then you never have access to any of your bowls. Or you open it up, everything fucking smashes, and then you can clean it up, and then you can deal with it. You can buy new bowls, you can fucking remove those bowls if you don't need them, whatever. But the analogy was so crystal clear with it was that, yeah, it's going to suck when you open that up. When you go back into the trauma and have to friggin' deal with that, it's going to be painful. It's going to be a process. But once it's cleaned up, you have all that space. You have all that energy that you've been using to hold on to that shit is now freed up for other stuff. And as you said, the things we do together outside of the house, that's the important part. That's how you build. I use the term psychological capital. So it's the money you have to burn psychological stuff. So thinking, right? It costs, $10 to get up and make coffee first thing and then go do a friggin' PT session. But that PT session pays you, $15. So at the end of it, you spend 10, but you get, profit of 5. Haha, now I have 15. But if all you're doing all day is spending money on anger and friggin', frustration or anxiety or fucking whatever it is, you come home and you have no money to spend. Right? You just, now everything, you're running in the red, you're in the deficit. You're, oh shit, you're giving from tomorrow already. And those are the interactions with your kids. Those are the interactions with your family. Those are the, and now you're at a deficit. So it's going to be even harder to give that up because you're taking it from tomorrow. And then, you have shitty sleep. You wake up, you don't have enough money. And now you're already low. You're already at your wallet's basically empty first thing in the morning. Whereas when you do these things, when you step out of your home, out of your thing, and you get into a group of people that you actually understand and have that context and have that type of personal attachment where you can walk up and be, hey, fuckface, what's going on? That gives you psychological capital. It allows you, when I go to jiu-jitsu, I'm physically tired, but I'm psychologically full. It's stuff that actually helps me. And then I have more capital for the next morning, and then I have more capital for the next stuff, so on and so forth. And it just kind of builds from there. I love your new approach on anger. I gotta say, very much very different from what we started with way back on episode 4 a couple of years ago. But if anybody, or do you have any final points on anger or anything that we've talked about before we move on?
I think we've nailed it down pretty good. I mean, like I said, it's not the be all end all. It has its place, and I think it's just it's on us to constantly challenge ourselves to find where it fits appropriately. And I really like those last two analogies you used, and they're both very different. At least the way I took them. Like the first one is, you lay out all your mess, and then you just neatly put it back in order, and then your cabinet's squared away and it's done. The second one actually mirrors real economics too. That psychological currency is real currency because you invest in growth things that are going to help you, be better and learn more and be able to do more. It's always going to benefit you. Versus, I mean, again, if you come back to the vices and the cheap dopamine thrills, right? I mean, we can spend ourselves into the deficit pretty quick and gain nothing from it. So I really like those two, and they're both they both fit the one thing, but they also both two very different perspectives. So I really dig those.
The one thing I've learned over the last 2 years worth of podcasting is that all the tools are basically the same. There's like 5 tools. It's just how you word it and how you understand it, how you interpret it, right? It's just little detail changes, but they're basically the same thing, right? Like you expose yourself to stuff, work with other people, right? They're all basically the same tools.
Well, we're kind of accomplishing our objective in a way though too, and so what you're saying is the lessons are all the same, but our language is getting a lot more efficient and effective. I mean, I bet you if we go back and look at that episode 4, I know for me personally, I can remember I'd be like, man, I was such a dummy back then, but I was really trying. It's like, and I still really am, but it's like I have a little bit better handle on how I can present things now. So it's kind of interesting just to kind of watch that too, and it's good to leave that out there because anyone else that wants to, again, the psychological growth, it's like, go look at the first episodes, now listen to these newer ones and see how much, it gets cleaned up along the way. It takes effort.
Absolutely. That's all it is for everything, right? Anything you want to do takes effort. And if you just keep working at it, you'll get there in basically any way you want. But yeah, we've been rolling for a little over an hour here, brother, and I can't thank you enough. It has been an absolutely fantastic chat again. If anybody doesn't know you or where to find you or wants to get some of your merch, how would they do that?
All right, so it's and the website's a lot different too as well from that point back then. So it's a lot simpler of an address. It's www.gobadger.co. And on there, it's not just merch. There's also my own podcasts are on there. I haven't updated those in a while, but I've got a few recorded. I like your model for doing it, so I'm going to employ that. So I'm going to start hammering those back out here soon. There's some blogs on there as well. Again, those are some of those hard lessons learned, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't really contributed to those in a while. Now, that being said, though, because I was kind of sorting my own cobwebs out of the old headspace upstairs here. That being said, I do have a lot more clarity and a lot more understanding of a lot of issues. So keep an eye on the website now, because what's going up on there from this point on is going to be a lot more effectively worded and I think better presented to the audience that it's tailored for. I mean, not to say the other ones weren't good, but I've done a lot more on my own time of self-reflection and things like that. So I'm just trying to always, like everybody else, we're trying to grow and be better at what we do. So the stuff that's going to come out now, I think, is going to be quite a bit better from this point forward, at least more focused anyways.
What about social media stuff? How do people follow you, all that good stuff?
I am on Facebook at Honey Badger Alliance, and on Instagram it's Honey Badger Alliance with no spaces. It's just Honey Badger Alliance. YouTube, I have not updated that in a while. I think I'm going to start picking away at that one again in a little bit and updating that one. But if you're following along on the other two platforms for now, you're probably going to get the majority from there anyways. I'm going to try, though. I'm going to try and put some unique stuff on YouTube, just because, like I said, it's a different format in the way you have to kind of do everything to get it up there. So I'm going to at least make it worth a while. It takes a lot more effort to put a YouTube video up too. So I'm going to make it at least unique then, so people want to come and look at that channel. So that's the other challenge I'm kind of playing with right now.
A wise man once said, "Do or do not. There is no try."
Fair enough. Did I say try? See, that's where I have to catch myself using that shitty language, right? So I mean, it's that defeatist language. But so I'm going to get
about growth, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm going to get unique stuff up on YouTube whenever I get around to getting that stuff again.
Yeah, when the priority kicks in, that's all it is, right? Anyway, I can't thank you enough. Again, it has been an absolutely fantastic conversation, and I look forward to the next time you're on, or on the next Sheepdog Roundtable, or whenever I get you back on here.
We're for sure going to cross paths somewhere, and if it's not, then September's coming up here pretty quick. So we still got that. Right. We still got that crazy ass long walk. That I don't know, man. Like that's just the thing. The first year was what was it, 52 or 56 or something like 52, and then the other one was 70 some last year. And I was like, man, I hope
76 last year. That was insane.
Yeah, I was like, I hope we don't go up from there, because that one really hurt.
Well, John wants to do 222 next year.
I think that's spaced out a bit better, though, isn't it? It's like over. I think it's over 10 days or something like that.
Something like that. But yeah, I got a lot of work to do before I'm up in that range. My knees will not take me that far, so we'll see. They're gonna have better cybernetic implants by then. You'll be able to run that ship by then. Man, hopefully. I've been waiting. I figured by the time I was 40, we'd have friggin' like magic. Be able to replace my knees and I'd be healthy, but no.
Whatever happened to nanobots? How come we don't hear about them anymore? That was supposed to be the thing, remember? Like, they even had it that Friday the 13th where they made Jason into that better monstrosity.
Nanobots or stem cells back in the 2000s, and everyone's like, stem cells are going to revolutionize medicine, and everyone now is like, well, we're not allowed to use them. Anyway, we got interesting stuff in the future. Let's just say that. We'll go from there. All right, brother. We'll talk to you later.
All right, thanks a lot. It was a great chat.
That concludes another episode of The Toolbox. I really appreciate you all listening. It has been my absolute pleasure bringing you this guest. If you enjoyed what you heard, please like, share, subscribe, do all that other wicked stuff. It helps me keep the lights on. To all those out there putting it on the line every day, I just want to let you know that I appreciate you. Military, veterans, first responders, civil servants, you name it. Keep this place running, and I really do appreciate it. So thank you. Don't forget, stay open, stay humble, stay focused. With grace, not slack. Gmo.